go ahead and get started, I'd like to welcome you to tonight's council meeting, the first one for 2018. And I will call this meeting to order. And Ms. Flatt, will you do the roll call, please?
Honorable Mayor Dyer.
Present.
Honorable Vice Mayor Norris.
Present.
Honorable Councilman Bilbrey.
Present.
Honorable Councilman Grant.
Present.
Honorable Councilman Hill.
Present.
At this time, would you please stand? Mr. Morrison will lead us in our invocation.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the many blessings of life, Lord. We thank you for the opportunities you've given us this day, Lord. We thank you for the warmer weather you've sent to us, Lord, and we pray that all the community is able to stay warm tonight and dry. Lord, we pray that you would direct this council, Lord, that they would go the direction that you would have them to, that it would improve the lives of the citizens of this city, and we continue to make new steps forward, Lord, as we begin this January of 2018, that it would be a great year for our citizens, that they would see lots of new services and opportunities come to town, Lord, and we pray that your will would be done. It's in your name we ask these things. Amen.
Captain Swallows, will you lead our pledge, please? To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first item tonight is to consider the agenda and minutes as they are presented. Everyone has had an opportunity to look over everything. Any questions or comments on the agenda or changes? I'll move approval as presented.
I second.
Motion and second on the floor. Mrs. Flatt?
Mayor Dyer.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Norris.
Yes.
Honorable Bilbrey.
Yes.
Honorable Grant.
Yes.
Honorable Hill.
Yes.
Item number 2 is to consider approval of the council meeting minutes held on December 12th of 2017. They were included in our packets as well. All the business that we covered at last month's meeting. Are there any changes or notations that may need to be made?
No, sir.
I'll move approval then.
Second.
Motion and second on the floor. Mrs. Flatt?
Mayor Dyer.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Norris.
Yes.
Honorable Bilbrey.
Yes.
Honorable Grant.
Yes.
Honorable Hill.
Yes.
Item number 3, consider approval to suspend the reading of our newest ordinance 621-17. Mr. Morrison, would you speak to that, please?
We're just suspending the full reading of the ordinance. The ordinance is an ordinance to change the zoning classification of approximately 0.93 acres located on Highway 111 North from R1 Single Family Residential to CA General Commercial.
I make the motion. I second.
I have a motion and second on the floor. Mrs. Flatt?
Mayor Dyer.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Norris.
Yes.
Honorable Bilbrey.
Yes.
Honorable Grant.
Yes.
Honorable Hill.
Yes.
And following with that ordinance, the next item, we will now open the floor for public comment on this ordinance 621-17. And anyone wishing to express any comments or questions on this ordinance, please step forward to the microphone. Let yourself be known and make your comments. Since there's no one approaching the microphone, I'll now.
I'll ask.
Yes,
so
sir.
why are we why switch the zoning on this? Just curious.
This is located on Highway 111 North. Mr. Qualls is here representing the property. They are wishing to move their business here, which is it Allen's Exteriors, is that correct?
That's correct.
And it is currently zoned R1 single family. However, there is CA general commercial in the area due to it being located on Highway 111. And so that was the reason for the request for the rezoning. Mr. Qualls, would you like to step to the mic and
Would love to hear it.
I can answer the
Great.
question, sure.
So exterior,
Well, we're a roofing and construction company, been located in Cookeville for 20 years. This property became available to us a little over a year ago, so we purchased it. The property that we're in currently we have sold and looking to rezone and move our business to Albany.
fantastic, fantastic.
Okay.
Welcome
Any other
aboard.
questions?
The proposed property, is it part of the McAlpin Farm, or does it neighbor the McAlpin Farm?
It neighbors, yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
And is there any structure on there now?
No
I mean,
structure on there now.
I didn't think there was.
This change met approval, comes with a positive recommendation from the Planning Commission, if I'm not mistaken, at least a couple of months ago in the November
That's correct.
meeting. Okay.
What's your time frame for building?
As soon as possible.
Fantastic. That's the right answer. I like that. And but this changing of rezoning, I mean, they've looked at, like, this isn't gonna interrupt anyone else's plans from a residential standpoint or anything like that. I mean, I think I'm familiar with the property and,
And that's correct. And one of the other things too was, as Mr. Morrison mentioned, it being on the major right-of-way, 111, a lot of farmland located in that place, but have had some interest in CA zoning. And in order to eliminate a lot of spot zoning, if you will, this falls into the proper characteristics for general commercial. So,
Thank you.
yes, sir.
Well, I'll make the motion.
Second. I have a motion and second on the floor for approval of the second and final reading of ordinance 621-17 to change the classification of approximately .93 acres located on Highway 111 from R1 Single Family Residential to CA General Commercial. Mrs. Flatt?
Mayor Dyer,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Norris,
Yes.
Honorable Bilbrey,
Yes.
Honorable Grant,
Yes.
Honorable Hill.
yes.
Item number 5, consider approval for our police chief appointment. And I'm gonna go back at the beginning and just kind of give a brief overview for everyone in attendance. Last year, and I don't recall the exact day or month, the council, in its present state at that time, decided to have MTAS, which is the Municipal Technical Advisory Service, to begin the process for selecting a new police chief for the city of Allgood. All the applications were sent to MTAS. Even if they were received here, they were forwarded to MTAS for, for them to, of course, possess and to look over. All of this being, and let me back up again. We actually gave MTAS a set of parameters or guidelines that we were looking for in a police chief, and that's what they went off of. Through that process, which took several months, as everyone is well aware, they lowered that list and lowered that list until they finally came down to a number of 10, and then finally a number of 5, I believe, and then, or excuse me, 3, I believe, and then down to 2. And those 2 names were presented to us as being the best applicants through the MTAS process. And at no time did any member of this council have any input into MTAS's processes or decisions. So this comes strictly from them, the two finalists. Tonight, we are here to select one of these two gentlemen as our police chief from the MTAS list. Before we do vote on this, I would ask that each council member, if you have any comments on the process itself or either one of the gentlemen or questions, please, by all means, go right ahead.
I'll start first by first off, thanking the candidates. This is, from what I understand as being the new guy, it was a kind of a long process. So on behalf of the council, we appreciate your time. We appreciate your interest in all good, and we appreciate your lifelong commitment to law enforcement, and an equal thanks to Captain Swallows as well for serving in this role, in the interim. I'd be kind of curious, and maybe Keith, you can help me understand, or help all of us and everyone here to kind of understand the MTAS piece of this. I mean, me personally, I think it's good that an outside independent entity looked at all candidates and did a unbiased review. So I'd be kind of curious to understand and know what that process exactly was. Who was on that panel? What were some of the parameters that we gave, and what their feedback was?
The one thing I didn't bring with me tonight was the ad that we run that gave the parameters for lieutenant rank for the person that we were looking for, some of the skill-based things that we were looking for, and that was turned over to MTAS. They worked with us to create that advertisement. The applicants sent their resumes and cover letters to Warren Nevad, which is the Middle Tennessee consultant from MTAS. He scored those based on 4 categories. The 4 categories were cover letter, experience and education, resume, and similarity to position. For each one of those categories, the candidates were scored on a level from 1 to 4. 1 would be a poor, and 4 would be an excellent. From those scorings, MTAS gave us the top 4. One of those dropped out prior to moving on to the next level, which gave us 3 candidates to bring to what is called an MTAS Assessment Center. The assessment center was conducted here at City Hall. It's the first time the assessment center process has ever been used by a city in Middle Tennessee. It is a very thorough vetting process. It is very impressive to watch. During that process, Rex Barton, who is the police consultant for MTAS, led the assessment center process, going through the competencies. There were 3 scorers on the panel. One of those scorers was Warren Nevad, the MTAS Middle Tennessee consultant. Another one was Armintha Loveday, which is also an MTAS employee, as well as Chief Bill Randolph from Monterey, to get a local chief to get that experience on the board in the scoring process. Through the scoring process, the candidates were put through several activities. One of the activities was actually a formal interview in which they were scored in multiple levels of competencies, looking for acceptable and outstanding competencies. The competencies that were looked at were management principles, current legal issues, interpersonal skills, analytical skills, management skills, and motivation to achieve, work habits, and teamwork and cooperation. Rex Barton had the scoring guidelines and had a sheet that each of the panel was to fill out as they went through the process. At the end of the interview process, the panel had to agree on a score to apply to each candidate. The second part of the assessment center was to do an actual press conference where each candidate was giving a possible scenario that could happen here in the city. They had to go out and in 20 minutes prepare to present that to the press and go over that in a full press release, and they were scored on that. The third exercise is what's called an in-basket exercise, where they were giving a bulk group of emails and asked that if they were about to leave the office within, I think it was 20 minutes on a Friday, to take those emails and figure out which ones were top priority and which ones they would respond to prior to leaving the office that day.
Out of all these categories, each candidate was scored and given a final score, and those scores have been presented to the council.
Anyone else?
I'd like for the candidates to take the
Absolutely.
podium and speak to the public.
Before they do that, I would be remiss if I did not echo Mr. Hill's statements in a very, very large thank you to Captain Swallows and the men and now woman that works with him in the job that they've done over the past several months. Outstanding answering the bell on so many levels. And they're human beings too. It wouldn't hurt you to say thank you to them. It won't bounce off, I swear. It won't. And they've done an excellent job. They really have. With that being said, we'll just start because I see him first. Mr. Armour, if you'd like to step to the microphone, please.
Good evening. My name's Dale Armour. I am a Tennessee Bureau of Investigation agent. I've been in law enforcement for 38 years. I managed 24 counties in drug enforcement across Middle Tennessee. I had a staff of about 14, handled not only state budgets but federal budgets. During that time frame, I was involved in numerous investigations, but I also had personnel issues that had to be handled. I had an agent that passed away while I was the ASAC. I had an officer involved shooting where there was a fatality. I had to terminate 2 TBI agents during my time frame. One of those went on appeal all the way to Chancery Court. We did our homework. They were upheld in Chancery. It's not something you want to brag about, but when it comes to personnel and you got to manage, it's something that's important. I've been there and I've done that. My management style is very simple. You lay out what you need done, you give them a set of parameters, and you allow them to do their job. You give them their support they need. You make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, but you let them do their job. Job as chief, supervisor is to manage. And I'll be glad to open any questions, answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Armour?
In your time with TBI, talk more about your leadership, in terms of, being able to effectively lead a project. I mean, it's tough for us to sit up here and we don't we're not law enforcement.
I understand.
Well, excuse me, Councilman Gilbert was in law enforcement, so maybe we'll welcome his learned take on it here shortly.
Right.
More curious on your leadership style and what your philosophies are for just general leadership of officers.
I'm definitely not a micromanager. I believe in, like I said, setting a goal, whatever that goal is going to be, whether it's to put someone in jail, manage a budget, whatever it's going to be. You allow your people to do that job. You make sure they get all the support they need. Also, I don't believe that discipline is a major issue. Back up. I don't believe somebody intentionally goes out and does something wrong intentionally. A lot of times it's a lack of training. It needs to be addressed. If there is an intentional act there, then of course you deal with it. But for the most part, a uniformed officer on the street, I spent 7 years. What I did not tell you is I've spent 7 years with the Murfreesboro Police Department. 4 of those years I spent as a field training officer. We created the training program that they have today. While I was there, I wrote a training manual along with myself and 4 other training officers. And it was everything from how to put gas into a car to what your first responsibilities were when you arrived at a crime scene. So throughout my career, I've always been involved in some type of leadership. One of the things that I believe I bring here to this agency, as a TBI agent, I have had to do a lot of different things. And whoever you choose tonight, whether it's John or myself or anyone else, I hope a missing child never comes up in this community. I've not only been to the schools, I've actually managed those type cases. Adam May's case comes to mind. Killed a young mother, took 2 children, went into Mississippi with them. I was in the command center for days on end while that was going on. I have that experience. It's not something I just went to class for. I've had that opportunity as that. The drug unit is something I spent most of my time in as a manager. I also spent a lot of time in the criminal intelligence unit, which I know you don't know, probably don't know what that means at TBI, but that is like the hub of what everything that goes on. I had civilian employees, I had criminal investigators that worked for me. We had to deal with other task forces. While I was in there, I managed our command post, I managed our aviation unit. I also managed the sex offender registry. And while I was there, we were able, through going back and going through what we had, we were able to reduce the amount of absconders by over 1,000. And the program that I instituted at that time is being used today to make sure that we get those sex offenders accounted for. You're looking at someone who has done a little bit of everything in law enforcement. I've been a local police officer. I've been a training officer. I've been a state investigator with the Highway Patrol. I spent 10 years there. I know that's on my resume. I've spent 21 years with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. About 8 of those years, I have been assigned to a federal task force of some sort. I was one of the original people that started the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force. And to kind of give you the task force concept so you understand where I'm going with it, they take state and local officers, they pair them up with federal agents, they deputize you as a special federal officer, and your job is to go and hunt the worst of the worst, the most violent offenders. I also asked to get some experience. I spent 3 years with the FBI Violent Crimes Task Force, and there we went after people who were just preying on our society. Is there something I'm not covering here? I'm sorry. I think everybody has heard me say this. I'm not perfect. I will own my mistakes with you. I'll correct what's wrong. I would like to move my family here. We are very dedicated to this community. We're dedicated to this move. This is not something that, if I may go into a personal side of this for a moment, I've got a son who wants to go to Tech. I want to come back and help local agencies. That's what I've done my entire career. I'm the guy that knows where to go get what needs to be done. All Good does not have all the resources it needs at certain times. Those special things that happen, like a missing child. I've spent time with TEMA. If we have something that goes on here, I know who to go contact. I think the best thing I ever heard in a training thing was I don't need to know how to do everything, I just need to know what can be done and who can do it. And out of the last 30 years with the state, I pretty much know who can do what if we need it here. And a lot of times I can get that done without hitting our budget. And that's a very important thing. To any community, that's an important thing. I have looked at the budget here. I have looked at this department and city as a whole. You're one of the few cities that run in the black. I think that's admirable. The community I currently live in is Murfreesboro. It's a great place to live. I would not want to balance our budget there, I'll be honest with you. So, let me open it up. What questions do you have for me? I'll answer anything you got. I'm an open book.
Any questions for Mr. Armour?
I'll take a second one. Okay, so what do you see are the major law enforcement issues here for All Good? I mean, what you just described is sounds impressive. Sounds like you've got a wide variety background in law enforcement, everywhere from the federal level to violent crime, sex offenders, etc. What do you see are the hurdles for All Good, and how is your background going to meet those needs?
One of the things I feel like is nationwide, it's not just All Good. I think we've got a problem we've always had a drug problem, but I think now we're getting into prescription drugs. It's been a major, it used to be meth. Everybody was worried about meth labs. We still have them. But I believe that when someone goes to a doctor and they get a prescription, they feel like it's okay, and they abuse them and then they sell them. I think that's an issue that goes on in all communities. I've been around a long time, and I don't mind putting somebody in jail. I've worked a lot of violent crimes. I don't mind putting that person in jail. Sometimes though, I think we need a little bit of compassion, especially at a local level. I think sometimes when you've got a couple kids out here who's made a little bit of a mistake, I think maybe there might be some alternatives that can be done before you start putting them on the, you remember when I was a kid, everything went on your permanent record. Well, you know, I think before we get something on a permanent record, I think we ought to show a little compassion for some of them, maybe some community service, something like that can be worked out. I'm not opposed to that. Now, if they've done something violent, they've done something that's against the city here that has to be dealt with, I'm all for doing that. But if it's just something simple, say a simple vandalism, maybe that might be, we might need to look at that a little bit for juvenile. What else is affecting our community? I think one of the, you know, we hear terrorism, we hear sales. We have issues in the United States that I believe that people are just mad. They're just frustrated. And whether or not we have a homegrown terrorist organization, no, but do we have some people who might want to do something against the government? I think we're going to see more and more of that. I see it. I was a very small child in the 60s, but in reading history books and stuff, I know that it's almost like we're making that full circle. So I'm seeing that again. I think that's something else we need to be aware of. I was in Shelbyville for the white rally, the white supremacist rally. I saw how that was handled. I saw the good parts of it, which the majority of it was good. I saw a few things that probably could have been tweaked, but for the most part, the sheriff and the police chief there did an excellent job. When they rolled us into Murfreesboro that day, of course, nobody showed. But all of a sudden, we got a call, and we wound up going to Henry Horton. We had 2 park rangers out there and about 300 white supremacists, and they were yelling for help. And by the time we got there, they left. So we still have the same problems we're always going to have. I think it's how we deal with them, how we deal with them as police officers, how we deal with them as a community. Something that I admire about Allgood and what I have noticed is that the citizens here support the law enforcement. I've seen very little negative comments by citizens. I've been in the community here. I've come up on my own time I've sat in the restaurants. I've listened to people talk. I wanted to see what was going on here before I made a full commitment to your town. And I'm very impressed with the citizens here. I'm impressed with how they feel about their law enforcement officers.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Armour.
Thank you.
Mr. Frazier, would you please?
Afternoon. This has been a long task, but it's coming to a head. I'm not going to try to compete with this guy. He's older than I. I want to say this, first and foremost, I thank my God. I never thought I would be to this point, but I am. And what an awesome journey this has been. I moved to this community a little less than, right around 3 years ago. And I'm still a transient, but I'm getting closer. I'm getting attached to this community. The one thing that I can say is, with coming into this community, I've learned to know things and learned to get acquainted with people. And that's the key that I want to focus on before this board. I've been a law enforcement officer for 28 years. I still wear a uniform. I still get in a patrol car. I wear a duty belt, rather large duty belt. I still go out and I see the crime that is occurring in our communities today. I see the victims of crime, and I see the escalation of our society. Now, the only thing that I can say about this to you as a council, I would not want to have to make your decision tonight, but you are blessed because either way you go, you're going to have some referent knowledge that I think that will be very adequate to this community. My approach to this department is the same it would be in any facet of my career. We have got to have community relations, and we have got to build a transparency in this department that the community never does doubt our actions and what we are doing. We are a viable, professional, and accountable department, and will continue to do that. And either one of these men, me or him, you pick tonight, you will have that. I have had to go through some struggles in my law enforcement with bureaucracy. I don't deny that. And I've seen some things happen that should not have happened within elected officials and appointed officials. But one thing I can stand before you tonight and say, I never compromised my values. I never compromised my integrity to God. And I never compromised my career. I'm very honored of that. I want us to look at everything in exchange for what we have had and not look to the past, but look to the future, even here in Allgood. Let's face it, these people over here had some interesting things to write in the press. It's time to get positive things in the press. Not only do I want to have that accountability with the citizens and community of Allgood, I want to think about our officers. We need to invest in our internal agents. You have an external agent, which is our community, and internal agents, which is our officers. We need to retain our officers. We need to adequately train them, not just train them. We need to give them the things that are needed to be the most productive of this community. We need to give them contingency plans of understanding of how to properly handle certain situations. Not saying they're not doing it. I'm just saying we need to look at our policies and procedures. Are they up to rules and regulations under the post commissions of the state of Tennessee? Are we teaching diversity? Are we handling things properly when we need to handle them? That's a responsibility of any administrator or leader in the agency, not just this one. We have to look at how we're retaining our officers and have career development. Let's build our officers up. Let's give them career development. And I'm going to tell you, I've done more training than anything else in this job, and I have found the more you train them up, the more you give them education and give them good quality training, the better product you have out there on the streets. And that reduces your issues of having to face lawsuits and all the accusations and the claims of things that are going on. And with all due respect to technology, body cameras doesn't always fix it. It's a culture. It's a narrative that we have to develop in our officers. And not only do I want to retain them and build them up in career development, let's appreciate them. It's a tough job. And it's hard to the families, and it's hard to them. And they need to know they've got strong leadership that's out there with them and leading by example. I promise you, as your police chief of Allgood, you will not find me behind the desk a lot. And Mayor Dyer, I can tell you right now, you'll be calling me a lot, wondering where I'm at. And I'll be out here with the guys because it's in my blood. I have been on the streets for a long time, and I can't get it out just yet. I want to be able to look at our budgetary means. I'm not here to write checks that I cannot cash. And that's why I have you. And we will work to what we have to do to make sure we're competitive with our salaries, make sure we're competitive with our wages, make sure we're competitive with everything we need. But let's make sure things work, not just to be wasting taxpayers' dollars, because I'm a taxpayer too. So I just want to second the comment that I thank you for the opportunity. I've been truly blessed to come to this position and this opportunity, and I'm open for any questions you may have for me.
Any questions for Mr. Frazier?
Mr. Frazier, what department do you work for currently?
Currently, I'm with the Overton County Sheriff's Department.
And what's your rank there?
I'm ranked as a lieutenant.
Okay.
I'll take the same question that I asked of Mr. Armour. So your leadership techniques, you know, it's about a coach getting his players to buy in for him, or in the football analogy from last night. What is your leadership techniques, and how do you get buy-in from the officers that you would be supervising?
Well, I don't think we need to really reinvent the wheel. I think Nick Saban has learned that in reference to last night. It's not in how you coach or deliver the message, it's how you imply the message that it gets resonated to the players. And I learned that and I think you and I had talked about this earlier at one time. You know, my biggest forte in law enforcement was recruit development. I actually took recruits in under the training and actually developed them into law enforcement officers. You know, I would use principles such as Myers-Briggs, personality testing, and things like that, just to get these officers developed and see how their personalities are going to correspond with field training officers and stuff like that. I've always led with my men. I have never been outside of that genre of what they were doing on the streets that I could not go out and perform myself. I feel inadequate if I do that. There was a time in my career that I was lieutenant over patrol and I had 85 men under me. I can give you a case in point if you want to hear about, you talk about adversity. A former sheriff I worked for had sued the county and got 56 positions that needed to be trained within a year and a half. At the same time, I was promoted to sergeant, and the training coordinator at the time said, "Here, good luck." So not only did I have 56 men to bring in and develop as young officers, I had to coordinate a field training program, coordinate the field training officers, and coordinate a success rate of about 96%. So out of those 56 men and women, we had a 96% success rate. I take that personally because that was my responsibility at the time. And the one thing I learned out of that is just the same thing it is now, same thing as it was 25 years ago. I always had the most respect and admiration for those that I seen perform, not the ones sitting there ordering behind the desk that has been there for 30 years. And that's how I lead. And they want direction. I still need direction. But I encourage them as well, not only ask me the answer, but give me the probabilities of what your answer would be. And that's how we develop them. And we apply that to everyday services, no matter what, not just law enforcement.
So, second question, same question is, okay, so what do you see as our challenges here in Allgood, and maybe give us a flavor for how you see, you know, interdiction programs to stop some of those issues before they occur?
Well, I want to approach it with a two-pronged approach, okay? Do we have drug issues in this city? Yes. The same as we do in Putnam County, Overton County, anywhere else. The disadvantage that the criminals know is the fact that I'm just working north of here in Overton County. I do interdiction on 111. When I run them off from the Dollar General at Rickman, guess where they come? They come to the Walmart parking lot, and I know that. And we're going to go after that. But by doing that, and by getting it out of our city, we've also got to look at how we're going to approach it. We can't be everywhere at one time. I'm very big on community relations. I want us to develop our community relations, regardless of the size. We got, 4.3 square miles of this city, a little over 4,000 people. But that still needs to be a contingency plan on the department's responsibility to make sure that we are doing everything we can through diversity training of our officers, customer service training, whatever it takes to get us to understand the first and foremost thing that we do as law enforcement officers is protect and preserve. But we can't do that if the community doesn't trust us. And that's where we've got to go, because there's been some trust issues in this city, and we need to get that back. And we need a face that can do that and have confidence in leading. And I think that we can. Either way, you'll get it done, because that's our mindset. Me and Dale come from the same mold. We've got a lot of opinions that are the same mold of how we are, just because we're from different facets of law enforcement. We have a lot of thinking the same. But it all starts with our community, having diverse training, having a contingency plan in place, reach out to our businesses, our churches, our school, and go from there to ensure that we have the problem. But we have things within that. To answer your question directly, we have responsibilities in our community, regardless of what the problem is. If we've got a gang problem, we've got a drug problem, whatever it is, we still got to do the responsibility of getting into our community and see exactly what their concerns and problems are. Then we'll fix them.
Anything else from anybody? Thank you, Mr. Frazier.
Thank you.
Before I entertain a motion, I'll ask once again, any parting comments on either one of these gentlemen as our new police chief?
Comment. I just want to parrot what you were saying. I think either person that we choose would be a huge asset to Allgood. Again, I want to thank you for your time and all the dedication that has taken over the last few weeks, months. Thank you again.
Anyone else? To cover it just briefly once again, it's been a long process. Some people would even call it arduous at best. But I personally believe that it takes that time, that meticulous looking for that right person, if you will. And the MTS process handles that pretty well. It's going to be a difficult decision. There's no doubt about that. But to echo Mr. Grant and Mr. Frazier, you know, whichever one we pick, I believe we're going to get a very, very good leader that this department desperately needs. That's not to downplay anything that Captain Swallows has done or any of his sergeants as the way they've led this, because they've done an outstanding job. I'll say that again. But this department needs a chief, and we're going to choose one tonight. And I will entertain a motion.
I make the motion to go with Mr. Armour.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve Dale Armour as the police chief for the city of Allgood, Tennessee. Mrs. Flatt.
Mayor Dyer,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Norris,
Yes.
Honorable Bilbrey,
Yes.
Honorable Grant,
Yes.
Honorable Hill.
Yes.
Difficult, yes.
Our next item is the city administrator's report. Turn it over to Mr. Morrison.
The Burton Branch project is nearing completion, thank goodness. We have new pavement on the ground. Public Works Director Jones and I met with the city engineer today and went out and completed a punch list of things that are yet to be completed, mostly minor things, with the exception of completing the sewer station and firing it up. It's probably the most major hurdle we have at this point. Everything else is pretty much completed. There's some valves that we'll have to attend to and ensure those are correct. The fire hall is slowly about to take off. We have had an issue with the power to the building. The pole is currently sitting in the actual footprint of the current new fire hall plan, and so we've been having to work with the electrical engineer from the architect's firm, as well as meeting with Upper Cumberland Electric to work on an alternative plan. I released load levels to the engineer yesterday, and I hope to have that resolved, and as soon as that is completed and the power addressed, the fire hall project will move forward and we'll get a completion date scheduled. The THDA grants are in full swing. There were 2 final homes that had been selected for the $187,000 total grant that were to bid out in January, and we hope that will expense the final remaining balance of those accounts, and that grant will be 100% used at that point, is our hope. The water sewer project is moving forward. We have arranged for bond counsel. We've met with the engineer today and looked at the final plan, as well as beginning the easement access to property. We're going to begin that process. All the paperwork has been turned in to USDA, so everything's in line there for the loan and the grant to take place. The water tank here in town that's up on the hill is something we're going to have to address soon. It's going to be in need of paint. It has not been in service for many years. Without Victor, I can't tell you the exact timeline of when it shut down. We were discussing it earlier. I think it's been several years since it's been painted. So we're going to have to address that in some form, shape, or manner, whether it be to paint it and keep it, or to try to find someone that would take it down for the metal and would not be out any cost and just get rid of it. So that's something we need to look at as we move forward, how to address that.
We don't need it.
It's currently at an elevation that does not work with the rest of the system, so it'll never pump any water out because the elevation of the overall system is higher than the tank. Sidewalk, I'm working on grants for that, bidding paperwork to get that bid out so that we can get some sidewalks down. The intent is to start at Trinity and work our way up Main Street in front of Dollar Tree and connect at the Allgood Diner, so that there's one complete sidewalk from downtown at the ball field all the way to Walmart. There is a section there where there is no sidewalk at Trinity and Dollar General, and people have to cross Main Street, so we want to try to alleviate that. So that's one thing we're working on now.
It's a scary crossing.
It is, especially with all the traffic now. So we're going to work on putting tile in there at the storage buildings and putting sidewalk all the way down through there to connect that whole side together. The other thing that we need to address, we're having some issues with Main Street at Walmart. We've got a couple issues going on there. One is we're having light malfunctions because the loops are down, and we're going to have to repair those. The other issue we're having is it's washboarding and kind of wallowing out, so we're going to have to address that. We originally had looked at trying to do Main Street all the way down to the diner and maybe try to widen it. That came in a little bit too high. The section from around Sonic to Burton Branch to cut all of that up, grind it up, redo the loops, put new crosswalks in, and repave that with a higher grade of pavement at Walmart to address the truck traffic so that it doesn't come up. It's a heavier grade pavement. Is estimated to be around $250,000. We did budget for $300,000 out of the state street aid to cover that. My other intent is, if you all wish to proceed with that, is to go ahead and restripe all of Main Street. Even though we can't really afford to pave all of it, we do need to restripe it and get the lines back on it and get them visible. But the section from Walmart to Burton Branch is definitely going to have to be addressed soon. Then Director Jones is out tonight, and Captain Swallows, did you have anything? I want to thank all these guys. We've had a rough year this year. Ann, the office staff, Captain Swallows, Director Jones have stood beside me. We've had to really pull through some things. There's been some days where we just really struggled to keep the lights on, so to speak, and have really had to work hard, and I appreciate all these guys have done this year. And we're looking forward to a great 2018. I feel like we've got a good staff in place. Appreciate all the council. It's good to have a full board here, and hopefully this city will move forward, and I feel like we're about to put a positive step forward and step out of the valley now.
Well, I don't know about y'all, but I'm glad that the pavement's on Burton Branch Road. I'm glad it's wider. In case you don't know, that project began as a signed agreement in 2009 for the city of Allgood, and it is 2018. Definite improvement. Man, it was terrible. Anybody ever drove down before or through it before knows how rough it was, narrow it was, and how bad the curve was. But that problem's been alleviated. As far as the fire hall goes, a lot of people in this room know that this project's been on my mind since I've been up here for 7.5 years. We've been trying to get this just started. And now we can start seeing a little light at the end of the tunnel. I can't tell you how tickled I am with it. And this badly needed water sewer project will definitely help our water flow in town and put some people on sewer in some areas that we require to provide that service to. So we're definitely going to take care of that issue as well. And I've thanked Captain Swallows and the police department a couple of times tonight for the job that they've done thus far. Excellent. And I'll echo Keith's sentiments, but I'll go one step further. This city does not run without the employees.
I agree.
The day-to-day employees that do the jobs, that do the work. And this city does not run without the city management of Keith Morrison.
Right.
Period. That's my opinion, for the record.
I second.
We are to our portion of our meeting, the hearing of citizens and or delegations. If you have a comment, please step to the microphone and state your name and what you'd like to talk about.
My name's Bill Benson. I think y'all know me. One time I've spoken to this council is about the sound system. And I'd like to say that it's about 100% improvement over what we had before. I don't know who's responsible for it, but I want to personally thank you, because the only thing is, make sure you hold the microphone, bring it close to your mouth. But I certainly appreciate what y'all have done. Before, you know, I sit back there, I'm hard of hearing, I've lost it with a lot of shooting over the years, and I wear hearing aids sometimes. Turned up as high as I couldn't hear you. You sound like you were whispering up here. But you want to stay transparent, speak up, and let the public hear it, and I think you'll have more people coming up here, because at the time, I think I asked the audience, and there was a bunch of people raised their hands and said they couldn't hear. But I want to tell you how much I appreciate what you did. Whoever did it, whatever, if you need some money to pay for it, I'll help chip in on it.
Thank you, Mr. Benson.
Thank you. Anyone else? Folks, thank you for coming out tonight. Really appreciate your attendance. You're welcome to come back at any time. I'll move adjournment.
Second.
Motion and second on the floor. We are adjourned.